What is up, you guys? I wanted to give y'all a reading, and possibly, I'm not sure how I'm going to edit this exactly, but possibly I'm going to have it be popping up on the screen. But I will include a link to the story that you can find. But this is a story I wrote about Beowulf and Grendel. And, basically, the story of Beowulf, it's about this guy who, he's fought all these monsters, and he goes to this place to fight a monster called Grendel, and nobody really knows what Grendel is in the story, and he's killed a lot of people and stuff like that, blah, 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 so he goes there to fight him, and he does, and he wins, but kind of recently compared to last time, I want to say it was made in the 90s, I could be wrong, I could be very, very wrong, but somebody wrote a prequel to Beowulf. And this story was about Grendel. And in 12th grade, it inspired me to write a short story about, more so about Grendel, but about the two of them. Because, okay, like in the story of Beowulf, it makes Grendel out to just be a monster, okay? But in the one called Grendel, which is the prequel, we learned that Grendel is pretty intelligent and that he has feelings and such. And I wrote about that, kind of. So, here's my story. If you guys enjoy more content like this, I have written other stories, so just let me know. Okay, it's a little long, so here it goes. Beowulf and Grendel charged at each other, the glow from the torches showing Grendel's teeth bared, ready to strike. Meanwhile, Beowulf's muscles bulge as he makes a grab at the beast before him. But right when the two combatants touch, a bizarre pulse radiates from within them, and the duo finds the world around them darkens, and they get a feeling of tumbling through the air. Beowulf awakens with a start, his hand instinctively going to his sword as the sun flashes in his eyes. He rakes his hand across the oddly green grass. "How queer," he mutters softly. He slowly gets up, his mind a groggy mess of what has happened. Suddenly, he remembers and begins looking for the beast. He sees tracks and begins following them, when he suddenly comes across a blackened area of ground. He realizes it is hard and has strange yellow and white markings on it. As he cautiously ventures out onto it, he hears a rumbling sound. No, more like a growling. Sensing the danger, he unsheaths his sword and swivels towards the sound. What he sees only adds to his confusion. As it is a shiny and oddly shaped creature, with rounded paws and a glossy gleam. Strangely enough, its breath emits from the back of it, and though it makes the roaring noise, nothing on it moves except for the rounded paws. As it draws closer, Beowulf jumps out of the way, but swiftly brings down his sword against the side, causing what he can only assume to be one of its ears to fall off with a shattering of shiny metallic splintering. As he examines the strange piece that has fallen, another beast, significantly larger, appears, and this time Beowulf jumps off the road onto the opposite side he first came on. Pushing the strange creatures from his mind, he resumes following the tracks and comes upon a village with large houses and vastly tall mead halls, but a village nonetheless. As he makes his way through it, he sees more of these strange creatures, though going significantly slower and appearing to cause no harm to the people walking on the sides of the blackened ground. Deciding they will not harm him, Beowulf relaxes and begins to notice the people. They are unlike any he has ever seen, varying in height and size. Some had long hair, others bald. They spoke languages that sounded like gargles to him, yet others spoke a language he recognized, yet also didn't, as strange vowels were thrown in, and they had accents that were as foreign to him as the blackened earth. Many of them stared at him as he as he wove around buildings, his sword swishing and his chainmail rustling, yet his eyes full of fear and bewilderment. A group of what he assumed were young men approached him. They had on clothes that covered them fully, yet they remained baggy and adorned strange markings that he could not decipher. One begins asking him things such as, "Where are you headed, freak?" and began mocking his appearance. Though he did not understand the question, he understood the insult, and began unsheathing his sword. But the young men unsheathed small daggers. Beowulf swiftly cuts them down, not killing, but causing significant damage that allowed them to flee. "That was impressive," says a sudden new voice from behind. Beowulf shoulders around, his sword outstretched until he sees the speaker. It is a young maiden who has fiery red hair and cold, piercing eyes. She had lips that were inviting yet wore a look of caution, and her attire made Beowulf gasp in wonder as she had on a blue shirt that not only allowed her shoulders to be seen, but it hung rather low. And though her jeans had not a stain on them, they had various rips. Her shoes had odd strings, and they were rounded, the purpose unknown. Beowulf instantly gasped and began to apologize as the maiden began speaking. "Are you going to a Comic-Con or something?" she asked as she begins to fumble with a strange square emitting a glow from within the jeans. "I'm sorry, maiden. I do not know what a Comic-Con is, but I, the mighty Beowulf, am tracking a monster that has been plaguing the lands," Beowulf says with a confused look. "Wait, are you for real?" she asked surprisingly. "If by for real you mean I am who I claim to be, then yes, and I will do what I have set out to do," says Beowulf. "Follow me, we need to talk," the maiden says. "So women here wear jeans like that on purpose?" Beowulf asks as he sips his coffee in the coffee house they have now went to, as this girl he now knew was Rebecca had called it. "Yes, and this I said that later. Haha, no need for an explanation. Yes, and this is what's called a coffee shop. It's where people meet and get together, sort of like what were they called? Mead halls, but without the violence. But enough about that. I mean, you're the Beowulf, the legendary monster slayer. How did you get here to New York?" Rebecca asked with some fear in her voice. "Though I do not know what a New York is," Beowulf says between drinks, "it makes me proud to know my legend lives on. And though I don't know how I got here, I know the beast will feed, and when he does, I will be there to attack." "So much noise," Grendel says aloud to no one in particular. He wanders through the streets on all fours, even though the people still flee him. "Sigh, it's all the same here as everywhere else. Where is here, I wonder?" He suddenly sees a man telling passersby, "Welcome to New York." Grendel smells the man and realizes he hungers. He lunges at him, tearing his throat. But not before a gargled scream escapes. Beowulf suddenly springs up. "Where are you going?" Rebecca yells after him. "To fulfill my destiny," Beowulf says as he pumps his legs, racing towards the scream. He spots Grendel just as he finishes devouring the man, the blood gushing down his chest. "Monster!" Beowulf spits out. "I will slay you, though I know not where I am nor why. I trust the Creator to protect me while I while I purge your evil from this land." Beowulf charges, but Grendel but Grendel begins climbing to a nearby building. "Come and fight me, beast," Beowulf challenges. "No thanks," Grendel says coldly as he continues to climb. "You see, I've discovered how our tale ends, but to the, shall we say, help of some individuals, I do not like the ending," he says with a final vault over the building. Beowulf begins scaling the wall as well. "Why do you run from destiny?" Beowulf yells in reply. "Maybe because I want to be known as more than Grendel, the monster killed by Beowulf," Grendel says as he jumps off the building and begins racing down the street towards the vast area of grass. As Beowulf gets back on the street, Rebecca catches up and demands an explanation. Beowulf explains what has happened to her, and Rebecca listens intently, occasionally nodding her head. At the end, Rebecca claims to have an idea of how to catch Grendel. "Looks like I'm a dead corpse walking," Grendel thinks as he leafs through the story of Beowulf, rereading the scene of his death over and over, engraving it in his mind. "Even though I know my fate, I still cannot avoid it." In anger, he throws the book at a tree and leaves it where it lies. He begins brewing in his thoughts. He suddenly hears a cry in the bushes behind him, his claws extended as he sniffs the air and smells a female human. He slinks over, approaching carefully. Her red hair takes him back as she lies on the ground, holding her blood-soaked knee while the sun shines on her, cascading her beauty. But the sight of blood awakens his primal instincts, and he lunges at her. As he's mere inches from his prey, a sudden fist slams into his face, sending him sailing back. Beowulf emerges from the shadows and approaches Grendel. There is no more running, monster, Beowulf says coldly. I will slay you and return to my own lands. Grendel roars at the sight of Beowulf. You! He shouts. Why is it history remembers you? It honors you! Speaks highly of you! Yet spats at my name. I only longed for compassion and friendship, but was denied even the most basic of that. And to rub salt in my injury, man discards me as a crazed monster. Beowulf lowers his sword some. I had no idea. I apologize, friend Grendel. If you promise to lead the village, I will cause you no harm. While Beowulf was talking, Grendel was advancing on him, but his fur was relaxed and his fangs were not bared, and he had a smile on his face. I agree, Grendel says patiently. You fool. And with that, Grendel swats at Beowulf, but before Beowulf can raise his sword, he is raked across the chest with Grendel's mighty claws. As Grendel lunges at him a second time, Beowulf swings his sword up. As the sword makes contact with his claws, blinding sparks emit from it. The two combatants are knocked back from the force of each other's blows. As they charge again, the scene eerily familiar as Rebecca watches in awe as she witnesses possibly the greatest battle in history. And then suddenly, the two are gone. Some say the fight carried them into the woods, but Rebecca knows better. Fate did what it was meant to do, and the two's fighting caused them to return to their own times. As Beowulf walked away, she picks up the discarded book left by Grendel. I've finally done it, Rebecca says as she reclines in her chair, a laptop before her with a cup of coffee in hand. 2 weeks later, the doorbell rang as the young man walked into the small bookstore. He begins wandering around and accidentally bumps into a small table, causing a lone book to fall to the floor. As he picks it up, the title mesmerizes him, and after he checks it out, he sits on a bench and begins reading. Chapter 1, he says to himself, Beowulf, a ripple in time. And that's my story. I hope you guys liked it. I've also written some poems, some Doctor Who stuff. So, if anybody be interested, just let me know. And, like and subscribe for more. Thanks.